Okay.
So the attendance will change if you have any public watching.
Okay. All right, Mr. Chairman, I think we're ready.
We good?
Yes, sir.
Okay. All right. Hello, everyone. It's now 1 o'clock, and I'd like to call the Caswell County Planning Board meeting to order for this day of August 24th, 2021. I hope everyone's doing well. I'd like to thank everybody for being here. I'd like to thank Mr. Hoagland for putting our agenda packet together. Has everyone had a chance to review the agenda? Okay, then I'll entertain a motion to approve the agenda.
I'll make a motion to approve. Second.
All right, that's a motion by Mr. Harris, and I think a second by Mr. Daniel to approve the agenda. All those in favor, please let me know by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, like sign. Motion carries. The agenda is approved. Next, we have public comments. Mr. Matthew Hoagland.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I did not receive any public comments via email in preparation for this meeting. And we have only one member of the general public with us, but he is the applicant for the special use permit.
Okay, perfect. Would he like to speak during the public comments?
No.
He says he'll wait till he's on the agenda.
Okay, perfect. I figured I would at least give you the opportunity, sir.
All right.
So item 4 on the agenda, the approval of the July 2021 meeting minutes.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, there's one slight omission on there. I believe the only member who was absent at the July meeting was Mr. Swan. And as of right now, if I remember correctly, the minutes say don't have any members absent.
Yes, sir. That's correct.
Were you here last time? Or were you out?
No, I don't think I was.
Okay.
Okay, any other suggestions or modifications to the minutes? Okay, I'll entertain a motion to approve with the amendment that Matthew Hoagland mentioned.
Make a motion.
Second.
All right, motion by Mr. Swan. I think that was a second by Mr. Daniel. Is that right, Mr. Hoagland?
Harris.
Harris, okay, my apologies. All those in favor, let me know by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, like sign. Minutes are approved. And under new business, we have a special use permit application. Mr. Hoagland, could you give us some background information, please?
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We have with us today Mr. Gerald Gentry, 4509 Kimbrough Road in Hillsborough, North Carolina. Mr. Gentry owns a lot in Leesburg that's just under 1 acre. Doesn't yet have an address, but it's more or less across the street from the Leesburg post office. And it's in the Hyco Lake zoning area. He has proposed to develop and build out a 66 by 14 single family manufactured home on that lot. And as you know, manufactured homes in the Hyco Lake zoning area require a special use permit. The role of the planning board in this process, ultimately this is a decision, the special use permit is ultimately granted by the Board of Adjustment, but the role that the planning board has in this process is to review and to propose recommendations and revisions to the development that ultimately go to the Board of Adjustment for consideration. So I'll read for you a small excerpt of the UDO, which will give you guidance on your authority here today. This is under Article 4, Section 4.5 of the UDO. The planning board may, in its review, suggest reasonable conditions to the location, nature, and extent of the proposed use and its relationship to surrounding properties, parking areas, driveways, pedestrian and vehicular circulation systems, screening and landscaping, timing of development, and any other conditions the planning board may find appropriate. The conditions may include dedication of rights-of-way or easements for streets, water, sewer, and other public utilities necessary to serve the proposed development. The planning board shall forward its recommendation to the Board of Adjustment within 45 days of reviewing the application. If a recommendation is not made within 45 days, the application shall be forwarded to the Board of Adjustment without a recommendation from the planning board. And Mr. Chairman, I also have Donnie Powell, our Environmental Health Director, in attendance today as well, in case the board has any questions about those types of water and septic utilities.
Okay, great. And Mr. Hoagland, is it your understanding, I think you mentioned this, we'll just be making a recommendation today, so we don't necessarily need to go into a public hearing, is that correct?
That is correct. The public hearing is not necessary, and if you'll recall, I think at some point last year, the Aldridge family applied for a special use permit in the Hyco Lake zoning area. The planning board chose to not add any recommended conditions to that development, and then it went on to the Board of Adjustment accordingly. So you certainly may propose conditions and recommendations, but you may elect to do nothing.
Okay, perfect. And I know Mr. Donnie Powell is busy, so since he's there, if he would like to take the opportunity to address the board, I'd love to hear from him if he's so inclined.
Okay. The only comment I would have out there is that it is quite a challenging lot for a couple of reasons. The current location of the existing well and the proposed septic system is a challenge, but we have figured out a way to locate the home and the septic and the well on the property without, any encroachments. So, as far as we're concerned, it is a doable situation. The lot predates our repair requirements for septic systems, so it actually does not require extra area for repair of the septic system. If that were the case, the lot may be unusable, but in this case, because of those exemptions, he should be fine to do what he wants to do.
Thank you, Mr. Powell. Any questions from the fellow board members for Mr. Powell? Okay, hearing none. Thank you, Donnie. I appreciate you taking the time to be with us today.
You're welcome.
Mr. Hoagland, with Mr. Gerald.
I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman, you cut out there at the end. Was your question, is Mr. Gentry would like to speak?
I know it's really been a long time since that pandemic trying to get something going, but I mean, I'll be glad to get it going. I done got the people lined up to do it. I done tried to do it,
Yes, sir, Mr. Gentry. If you'd like to address the board, now would be the appropriate time.
Yeah, I mean, I've been trying to get this done since before the pandemic started and all that mess started, And I've got people lined up to do the work if I can just make sure it's approved before I set the mobile home up. No, you know what I'm saying? I won't make sure everything, spend any more money. That's about all I got to say.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Gentry. Any questions from fellow board members for Mr. Gentry?
Maybe just one. Is this a primary residence or is this a?
Yes, primary residence.
Matt, Mr. Hoagland, were you required to send out notices to the adjoining neighbors?
Not yet. A notice will have to run at least once in the Caswell Messenger prior to Board of Adjustment hearing.
Okay. And Mr. Hoagland, from your perspective, from your administrative perspective, other than the zoning qualification, does everything else meet our county's rules and regulations?
Well, the site plan that Mr. Gentry submitted does take into consideration setbacks, which even though it is a less than 1 acre lot, he is able to comply with the setback regulations. I would note that the site plan doesn't include anything related to parking or landscaping or any of the other items that are mentioned in the development ordinance as potential items that that can be added as conditions. So I would, from kind of an overview standpoint, like I said, it seems to meet the setbacks. I could foresee a scenario where the Board of Adjustment may want more information on those types of parking and landscaping and other development features in a site plan.
Okay, but that would certainly be taken up before the Board of Adjustment made their decision, correct?
That's correct. Yeah, they may impose those conditions with or without a planning board recommendation.
Okay. All right. Mr. Gentry, would you like to add anything else about the potential parking or landscaping on the property?
Yes, sir. The lot had the driveway on it that the man I bought off of put on it. It does have an existing driveway now.
Okay.
And it would be to the probably east of where the mobile home be, near the property line there. And he did put, I can't even think what his name was now. His sister's name, I think. But they'd already put the driveway in it, they got the permit for the septic system and all that.
Okay, all right. Thank you, Mr. Gentry. And this might be a silly question, but you are the owner of the lot, correct?
Yes, I am.
Okay, perfect. All right. Thank you, sir. All right, any other questions or discussions from the board members? Okay, hearing no further discussion, what is the pleasure of the board?
I make a motion to approve.
We have a motion to approve by Mr. Harris. Do we have a second?
So just to clarify, Mr. Chairman, this would technically be a motion to approve the plan as it is to send to the Board of Adjustment.
Yes, sir. And it's just a recommendation, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. All right. And I'm sorry, Mr. Hoagland, was there a second?
Yeah, Mr. Swan seconded.
1 second. Okay. All right. We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing no further discussion, all those in favor of the recommendation, please let me know by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, like sign. Okay. Motion carries. Thank you, Mr. Gentry. Good luck to you, sir.
Thank you.
Mr. Gentry, the next meeting will be in 2 weeks from today. That's
Okay.
September the 7th, back in this room.
The same room, okay.
Yes, sir. And I'll be in touch with you between.
All right, okay, thank you.
Okay, Mr. Hoagland, next under new business, item B, Southeast Caswell zoning plan review.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. If you'll give me a moment, I'm going to share my screen and bring up a brief presentation. Make sure you can see that as well. All right, can you see that, Mr. Chairman?
Yes, sir.
Fantastic. My goal is that this presentation will be maybe just 5 or 7 minutes. This will be shorter than the one from the July meeting. But this presentation is just really an overview of the amendments and the revisions that have happened to the proposed zoning plan since the July meeting. If you'll recall, at the end of the meeting, the planning board basically had a few points, kind of as summary action items. And these three here have really been addressed, which are to incorporate the county attorney's revisions to the Article 5 text language, to add a definition and some protections for home-based businesses like auto repair or small engine repair or beauty salons, things of that nature, and to create a list of properties to be zoned light industrial and then add those to the map. And there was a fourth item, which was to discuss ways to gather additional citizen input. That one's a little bit out of my purview, but I'm certainly happy to talk with you guys if you want to discuss that more today. So this is just kind of a brief overview of what I will cover here. And let's get right into it. Let me see if I can move this. So just to begin with the actual text amendments which have happened since the last meeting. Again, most of these were just incorporating the county attorney's revisions, which we discussed during the July meeting. You'll now see that the index here at the beginning of the article is fully numbered. The previous version that you saw, I think only down to about section 5.4 or 5.5 was numbered. And that's because, everything was kind of still in the draft stage. The county attorney also consolidated all of the zoning districts. In the previous version, the Hyco Lake zoning area was created on one page, and then you skipped a couple of pages, and then the new southeastern area was created. The county attorney really revised and consolidated all those together, and those are now in section 5.3. The table of uses has now been moved to the back of the document, so it's no longer a separate document. It's incorporated right in there. It's just moved to the back, similar to how it was when it was just the Hyco Lake zoning area. Sections 5.4 through 5.13 have been reorganized, and this is really just kind of cleaning up some of the language and then some small revisions. For example, the section 5.11 bona fide farms moved from, I believe, 5.6 to 5.11, again, based on the county attorney's recommendation. And there's a quite substantial change here as well, or at least, with regards to protections for home-based businesses. That term has now been added to the definition of residential and agricultural. So in the zoning code now, you'll see that the definition of residential agricultural zoning accommodates those home-based businesses. So this is that in particular. I'm going to actually allow Mr. Oakley, if he wants to comment on this. He was the driving force behind this change. So the new definition for residential agricultural is simply that it refers generally to the zoned area primarily used for single-family and two-family dwellings, bona fide farms, agricultural operations, uses that are supplemental to agricultural operations, and now home-based businesses. And this was the definition that Mr. Oakley had me to come up with for a home-based business. It may be established in a primary residence provided that no more than 50% of the total floor area of the dwelling is used for the occupation. And in addition, it may be located, or it may be a small engine repair, automotive maintenance, wood or metal crafting, or similar commercial service, and may be established within a residential accessory building. So this is really just if you have a garage already on your property, you may use that garage for your home-based business. And the accessory building shall be no more than 7,500 square feet of enclosed and heated floor space and must be located on the same property as the primary residence.
Hey, Mr. Hoagland, can I ask a quick question?
Yeah.
So the 7,500 square feet, so let's just envision a scenario where you have a residence located on a farm, and the owners have they built a storage facility or a warehouse. As long as that warehouse or commercial facility or storage space is less than 7,500 square feet, then they would qualify.
Yeah, that's correct. So the way that we arrived at the 7,500 square foot figure, and again, Mr. Oakley can certainly elaborate on this as well. The average Dollar General retail store, the site plan that I receive is exactly 9,100 square feet. We went through the county GIS system and tried to find the largest private automotive garage repair shop in the county. And I think we found one, the biggest one was 6,900 square feet.
So,
And even then it was on its own lot. So that 7,500 figure is really just trying to split the difference and, be accommodating for folks who may have, even a 3 or 4 bay garage, or maybe they have, a building that has some additions onto it. And in total, they have up to 7,500 square feet of, again, it says enclosed heated floor space. So maybe they have a deck that's an addition, or, something that's screened in. If it's not enclosed and heated, then it wouldn't count against the total square footage calculation. But that's how we arrived at that number. And I think that's certainly, flexible if the board chooses to change that or reject it or whatever the board might wish to do.
it was a starting point for discussion. I think you elaborated on the logic behind it. But the basic idea here is, we wanted to, it seemed important to protect home-based business so that they don't get caught up into rezoning type situations. And so by defining what a home-based business is, and the majority of that already, what was the definition that's in the UDO? What was the title of it?
Customary home occupations.
Customary home occupation. That definition is already in the UDO today, which has the 50% total floor space part of this definition. So the latter part of this was added to define what home-based business was. But what basically this, as Matthew said, this would, I think, improve this proposal by allowing home-based businesses to not have to get into a business zoning situation. And so it's a pretty broad definition. So like you said, I'm not aware of any home-based business out there today in our county that
It wouldn't fit in this definition.
would have a problem with this. So I don't see this as impacting any existing business and any future business that wanted to get, developed on your own property. It's it seems to be pretty available for everyone. So yeah, that's the basic idea with this edition.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Oakley. And Mr. Hoagland, it was touched on briefly at the last meeting, but we do have some farmers or property owners in this area that may have, say, a portable sawmill, or they may have heavy construction equipment that they operate. Would you envision that they could possibly qualify under this scenario as well?
Well, my first thought is if they're a bona fide farm, then they're completely exempt from zoning altogether. So if it's on a bona fide farm that is acknowledged by the county and the state for tax ID purposes, then they could have, quite large storage buildings and a flatbed trailer and multiple tractors and anything that is ancillary to the farm use, or even if that's not, and they would be perfectly fine. I suppose there may be a gray area if there was a business on an agricultural property, but it wasn't really an agricultural business. But again, so in the definition there for residential agricultural, it says uses that are supplemental to agricultural operations. So even if it can be construed as beneficial to farming or agricultural operations, I would foresee a situation when it would just either be untouched by zoning regulations or just stay in the residential agricultural code.
Yeah, and I was thinking, or at least what I was envisioning was maybe someone that operates a portable sawmill, and they may rough cut lumber for as merchandise or inventory. And you have folks that they run a bulldozer or an excavator to do work for business, but certainly I think they would qualify. But I just wanted to make sure we're being specific and we try to cover as much as we can.
Sure.
I mean, it seems to me that all that would be acceptable. I think in this proposal here, you're going to make that first determination.
I'm trying to remember, we discussed either sawmills or portable sawmills in crafting the high dough, if I remember correctly.
Well, yeah, portable sawmills are definitely exempt. And,
that's
and then
right.
there are regular sawmills that have
Screening, lots.
there's some definition there, right?
Yeah.
But regardless, if someone's running a portable sawmill or has a home-based business, this is gonna allow.
And Mr. Chairman, one thing too, it would be perhaps getting into a little bit of complexity, but let's say that you did have a situation in the future where a 50-acre lot was, 40 of the acres were clearly residential and agricultural purposes. And then the other 10 were more along the business lines that you explained. There could be a scenario where you split the zoning of a parcel where 40 acres of that parcel is zoned residential agricultural. Then the other 10 would be light industrial to accommodate that business. I have heard it expressed in the past that the county commissioners aren't wild about the idea of possibly splitting the zoning of two separate parcels, but it is allowed. The town of Yanceyville, for example, has split zoning for parcels. And I think under a hypothetical scenario like that, it could be an option.
Okay, yeah. Thanks for the explanation, Matt.
Yes, sir. Thank you. And I'll keep going if that's okay with everybody.
Man, I have
Yes, sir.
a question, like, going back to bona fide farm. If this is considered bona fide farm, if someone wants to set up a roadside stand, is that legal under this? I mean,
Yeah, as far as I understand, yeah, just
Some farmers land.
sell produce that's grown on the farm there. Sure.
yes.
Yeah. All right. So I think that's pretty much it for the text revisions to Article 5. As I mentioned earlier too, the table of uses is now moved to the end of the document as opposed to being a totally separate spreadsheet. And really there's just three main things to take a look at here. First off is that nothing about the Hyco Lake zoning area changed at all, even though we're adding on the southeastern Caswell portion to the far right there, nothing about Hyco Lake changed. One recommendation that we had was to add the Article 9 regulations to the table. So if somebody wanted to set up a mobile home park or they wanted to establish an outdoor shooting range, even though that's already covered in Article 9 of the UDO, this would be clear on exactly which zoning category that those could go into. And of course, even as they're labeled now, that is certainly flexible depending on the recommendation of the planning board. And then we just discussed home-based businesses. That is now added to the use table and permitted in the residential agricultural zone. So this is a map. This is a map that it will be new to you guys, but this is actually Commissioner Oestreicher's recommendation, just to make sure everybody is clear on exactly the portions of the county that are being considered. So this is a full-scale map of all of Caswell County, and it's a little bit, possibly a little bit hard to interpret because the road and the parcel lines there are quite thick. You've got the road in reds and you've got the parcel lines in dark green. But this is the kind of the lime green color there is what we're talking about when we say southeastern Caswell County. Again, these are the precincts that were in favor of zoning on the ballot referendum. This is Anderson, Leesburg, High Towers, and Prospect Hill. And as you can see, Milton and Pelham and the rest of the county is not included in there whatsoever. And then I had, I had Sylvia and GIS keep the Hyco Lake layer on as well. So you'd see here yellow for Hyco Lake, that's totally unchanged. And only the new lime green portion there is what we're talking about for the southeast zone. So again, this would be the incorporation of the new list of properties that would be zoned light industrial. The small little blue dots that you see on the map there are the ones that I received as recommendations to go ahead and change the zoning to light industrial. And really the rationale behind this, from what I recall, if I understand correctly, is basically we're seeking to add protections to those businesses that are already established in those categories. So for example, your corner stores, your Dollar Generals, your South Elementary School, for example, these are already, retail and commercial and institutional businesses which meet the definition of light industrial. So going ahead and zoning them in that category would allow them to expand, would allow them to rebuild, would allow them to do certain things, continue their operations without being a non-conforming situation. And then just for a little bit of perspective, so this is the old zoning map, or not necessarily the old one, but the one that we considered last month. As you see there, there's only the few parcels in Anderson and Prospect Hill. And the new map here has a lot more small parcels there shaded in blue. The list was a little bit too long to include on here, But in your agenda packet, I included a document entitled Southeast Caswell Zoning Light Industrial Properties. And then Chairman Johnston had recommended that we also discuss a few additional properties. In addition to that, the American Legion Building in Prospect Hill, the property right next to the American Legion Building where there are currently the sales, on-site sales of storage buildings. And then more broadly speaking, to some of the major intersections in the county, 86 and 49, 86 and 119, 86 and 158. And Chairman Johnson, you're certainly welcome to elaborate here on those bullet points if you would like.
Yeah, certainly. And I've got a few more to touch on too as well, Matt, at the appropriate time. But I want to mention something as well. The light industrial category, which to me seems a little confusing at times. Would it be possible to decipher between light industrial and possibly a third category, general business or commercial or highway business?
You certainly can if you want to make that recommendation to add a third category. I think that would take more time and add some. Yeah, go ahead.
It's just a thought. But as far as the other areas, when we spoke last week, it seems to me if we're going to adopt this zoning plan, I think we need to ask the question and figure out as a board, do we want to identify certain areas that have a potential for economic development? And just looking at the highway traffic and the traffic count, it just seems to me those three intersections probably have the highest volume of traffic and highest potential for commercial development. And even at the intersection of Highway 158 and Highway 119, there's an old gas station there. I don't think it's been in business for months, maybe even over a year. And then I think there may also be a local trash disposal unit right next to it. But those are just some thoughts, Matt. We don't have to make the recommendation, but I just wanted to see how the rest of the board felt about possibly designating areas that may have economic potential in the future, and whether or not we want to handle that now or handle it in the future.
Matthew, just a question on that. I mean, if we wanted to look at things like this for the future, how does that process work?
So you can handle that. Something like that you can handle through a few different processes. You could go ahead and make the recommendation now. I think time may be a little bit limited to actually incorporate it into the map and into the documents and everything before this has to go back before the commissioners. But you could certainly just add it on to the plan as a recommendation. You could in the future. Mr. Johnson, we talked about this a little bit. Part of the planning board's responsibility is to review the comprehensive plan on an annual basis. And as part of the conversation about reviewing the comprehensive plan, you can make a recommendation for zoning of certain high traffic or high likelihood of commercial type zoning and development. You could also, in the future, hypothetically, let's say this plan doesn't go anywhere, you could just start from scratch and create a new plan and make that recommendation to the commissioners. Or if this plan goes into effect and then you want to make a recommendation to amend it after it's already been passed, then you can certainly do that as well. So you got a lot of options. There's no, for that kind of broad, long range planning type proposal, there's really no hard and fast deadline on how the planning board approaches something like that.
But just thinking on the fly, if we wait until we review the comprehensive plan and we adopt these changes, will we have to go back and through the rezoning process, or will the comprehensive plan basically stand on its own, Matt? I'm just thinking about the procedures.
Yeah, that's an excellent question. So the comprehensive plan is really just kind of your guidebook, your roadmap. when you're traveling across the country and you've got a map on how to get there, you may, take a stop into a McDonald's and take a left when you should have gone straight, taking a detour or something like that. And that's fine, you're not breaking any laws, but the overall plan is what guides you to your destination. So the comprehensive plan is really meant to be the same type of document. It's really the overarching plan that the county says, we've assessed our economic development prospects, we've assessed our population and other trends, we've assessed land use development patterns. This is kind of the broad goal of where we see the county going. And then over time, you adopt specific policies that feed the overall goals of the comprehensive plan. So unless you go through the actual process of proposing an amendment and sending that to the Board of Commissioners for final consideration, then the comprehensive plan would just kind of sit there and the UDO would remain unchanged. You'd have to have an official amendment process like what we're doing right now to rezone those properties in the future.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Hoagland.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Holman,
Yes, sir.
Mr. Chairman. The intersection of 49 and 119, about half of that, or maybe only a quarter of that intersection falls within the Southeast Caswell zoning area. Is that correct?
You mean, so you said 49 and 119?
Yeah.
You mean 49 and 86?
Sorry, 86 and 119.
Yeah, actually, I think that should be Highway 119 and 158.
Oh, I see. Okay. Oh, in Leesburg. Okay. Yeah, if I recall correctly, that's fully in
It would be Highway 119 north where it crosses 158.
that would be here. So there's the Leesburg Fire Department, the abandoned convenience store, and there used to be a county convenience site there, but they've since moved it to across the street from South Elementary.
Yeah.
And then another one north on 119 before you get to Samora.
Yeah, I think it was just a typo, Highway 86 and 158. I think it was.
Okay, I apologize for that.
No, that's fine.
I just got a text from someone that says the link's not up.
Really?
Public link. I got the same text. Was it sent out?
Yeah, it was sent out last week. I had Ashley and Carla email it and put it on the website and all kinds of stuff.
Well, my participant link is running. I don't know whether that.
Yeah, if you go to the county website, under the calendar, there's a Zoom link for today's meeting. Do we need to recess to get this word out, or? Mr. Chairman, I think we're having trouble with people accessing the public link for the meeting. If you want to call a recess for a few minutes.
Sure. Let's take a recess and we'll reconvene as soon as I hear from you, Mr. Hoagland.
Thank you, sir.
Yep. I mean, it looks like we have six.
Okay.
It looks like we have 6 participants attending, but there's an issue with someone.
I'm not 100% sure why people are having trouble. The link is on the county calendar. And I got the information to our clerk to the board last Wednesday or Thursday, I believe, to email to all of our email lists.
Okay.
I think with the calendar on the county website, you have to copy and paste it into your browser.
Okay. And did you, I assume you just tested the link, Matt, and it works okay?
We tested the link in the room. Yes, sir.
Okay, because we certainly don't want to deprive anyone from, viewing the meeting or attending the meeting.
Sure.
So if the link does work, I'm fine with moving forward, but is there any objection from any of the members to moving forward?
No.
Okay.
And the full recording will be available as well, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, perfect. Let's make sure that's available on the county website. Okay, so the meeting will now reconvene, and Chair will recognize Mr. Hoagland if you'd like to continue the presentation, please, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And this is really just kind of the end of the presentation. So I talked with you about the revisions to Article 5, the use table, and the revisions to the zoning map. One thing that's important to keep in mind here as the board moves forward is kind of the time frame and the time window that you're operating under, the 45-day window that is prescribed by the Unified Development Ordinance. And specifically, it says the planning board shall have a maximum of 45 days from the date of the planning board meeting to make a recommendation on the application. And that would be a recommendation back to the county commissioners. Counting out from July the 27th, which was the first meeting in which this was considered, that means the deadline would be Friday, September the 10th. So acting today obviously would be well within the deadline. If needed, a special meeting or multiple special meetings could certainly be done by the 10th. So that's really it for everything I wanted to go over, and happy to answer any questions that anybody might have about any of those items.
Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Hoagland.
Yes, sir.
So the chairman had mentioned, a different category or the naming of light industrial. I think I've gotten some of the same comments about the confusion of that. So I guess if we wanted to also make a motion to, for example, change that to something like general business, that would be appropriate in this meeting as well. Right?
Correct.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
I specifically to Mr. Oakley's comment, I think that's fine. It makes sense. I have no issue with that. I do feel somewhat compelled to remind the board that the zoning proposal, the ordinance proposal sent to the planning board for review with consistency with the county's land use plan. And I would ask that any recommendations or change recommendations be consistent with that directive. Changing the name of that, actually, personally, I welcome that, but I'm not sure that's consistent with what the direction was provided. Am I too obscure here, or?
I'm not sure I understand the complexity of that. So.
Mr. Oshard, if you would like, I can pull up the county's comprehensive plan because it actually gives names to certain development patterns throughout the county as it was assessed back in 2013 and 14. Do you think that would be helpful?
If that's in there as such, and I say I have no, my comment is more of a general nature. I was just kind of making a footnote with the comment about the general business side. I have no issue with that. I think it's a good idea.
Each one make sure it's not inconsistent with something.
Right.
So you don't make later on to change it.
Actually, if that's in the land use plan and naming of these areas, I think that's fine. It's consistent with what the plan board has. So my comment still is of general nature and just as guidance on to what your deliberation should focus on.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Commissioner.
Let's see here.
So for instance, in Article 5, it says light industrial uses are not otherwise listed, so light industrial become a change in it.
Actually, I wouldn't, well, I mean,
So these are the categories that the comprehensive plan established in 2014, developed, transition, community, rural, and conservation. And there's a map that corresponds with this. Here's a nice little, handy little infographic. And some more descriptors. Transition to provide for future intensive urban development lands that are most likely to be scheduled for provision of necessary public utility services. Community is more single family and mixed use. Rural is pretty self-explanatory, and conservation is pretty self-explanatory. Here we go, okay. So this is, I have found this to be pretty instructive in the past. You've got red as developed, basically just Milton and Yanceyville, yellow as transition. And I believe the result of their study back then was that the only foreseen type of intensive type of development in the transitional category would be along Highway 29 and Pelham. But that would be more, based on the definition of transitional, that would be more the general business and industrial type category. Then you've got the community category, which are the already established kind of small town communities throughout the county. And then again, rural and conservation are pretty self-explanatory. So again, this is just really a general guide. It doesn't have to be exact to this, but I just thought this would be helpful in reference.
I appreciate you finding that. I think it's.
And this is what you're tasked with, to your comments, Commissioner Ostraker. This is what the planning board is tasked with measuring this plan against for the sake of consistency.
Mr. Hoagland, the land classes on the comprehensive plan compared to the land classes on the zoning plan, how would you connect those two? I guess developed would be, could be residential or commercial existing development, I suppose.
Yeah, I apologize. It's been a while since I read the comprehensive plan in depth, but basically, from what I recall, when they did an assessment several years ago, they basically just looked at the already most developed areas of the county, and really that just boiled down to Yanceyville and Milton.
Okay. Well, if we're tasked with mirroring the plan to the comprehensive plan, I'm just wondering how that translates.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir.
As I said, the direction to the planning board was to comment on consistency with the plan. I'm not sure mirroring sounds a little more restrictive.
Okay, so Commissioner, the consistency with the comprehensive plan?
Yes, sir.
Okay, all right, thanks for clarifying that.
I know that, as the author of the motion that sent it here, it was certainly my intent was to make sure it's consistent with what we've already developed in this plan. It's not meant to be a one-off copy per se. The whole intent, I know it's hard for some people to understand, was to protect areas that were desired by the people that voted for this from polluting industries, and yet not restrict commercial development or progress, new industries coming to the county that were primarily agriculturally based and brought jobs and new development to the county. And we worked very hard to create that, I thought. And allowed a great deal of latitude in what was pre-approved, if you will. And so far, the comments I've heard, if you will allow me to comment, I think are right along that line and consistent with what my hopes were. So I would ask you to keep moving on with this.
So,
Yes, sir.
do you have a copy of the directive from the county commissioners to the planning board?
I can get it. It's in the minutes of the June, was it the June 7th meeting? All right. The motion was made by Commissioner Ostrager and it was as follows, quote, upon consideration of many actions, including literally hundreds of public comments, hearings, moratoriums, and other deliberations, the county manager is directed to properly notify and set a public hearing concerning the proposed Article 5 zoning districts draft, which includes changes to the existing article and the additions of sections 5.6 through and including section 5.14, as well as the table of permitted uses and the Southeast Caswell zoning map dated June 2021, as amended per respective attached versions. The date for this hearing will be June 1st, 2021, and will include a summary of the conditional zoning district proposal to be presented by the county manager and county planning director at that hearing. In addition, the Caswell County manager is directed to transmit a copy of the proposed Article 5 as referenced above to the planning board for their official comment regarding, quote, consistency with the Caswell County land use plan. Such comment will be required to be presented to the Board of Commissioners during the June 2021 meeting. And the timing on some of those dates was altered because the UDO required a 30-day notice, and then once the planning board picks it up, you've got 45 days to make a recommendation.
So as I understand what they have directed us to do, they're not concerned with whether we are in favor of zoning, opposed to zoning, don't care about zoning. All they want to know is if this plan is consistent with UDO and the comprehensive plan. Thank you.
Yes, sir, that's correct. And I would say too that it's not necessarily that the Board of Commissioners feel that way, even though I assume that they do, and that's really their role in this process as well. But that's also what's specifically outlined by state statute. So the General Assembly, the general statutes require that the planning board review and make comments and recommendation and measure it against plan consistency with the comprehensive plan. Right. Yes, sir.
Which is where that phrase came from.
That's 160D-604, by the way. Since I got to memorize 160D over the past year and a half.
So,
But that's a very accurate assessment. It's not a question of whether or not you personally want or don't want zoning. It's really a measurement of if you feel this plan is consistent with the broader comprehensive. Yes, sir, which I printed out for you for this meeting.
and in your opinion,
I don't get to have an opinion.
So, Mr. Chairman, are we at a point where we can accept motions?
Well, Mr. Oakley, I had some properties that I'd like to add to the district, but
Okay,
now I'm starting to think that if our only task was to look at the original plan and determine whether or not it's consistent with the comprehensive plan, then I'm wondering, Mr. Hoagland, did we even have the purview to make changes or the task to make changes to the map at all?
Yes. You get to do two things within your directive. You get to make recommendations and you make a value judgment of consistency with the comprehensive plan. And I think that the state gives you the latitude to make those recommendations so that you might amend the draft to bring it closer to where you think it should be in line with the comprehensive plan.
Okay, perfect. Well,
Yes, sir.
Mr. Oakley, if it's okay with you, I've got a few more properties I want to propose. And then, of course, you guys can make a motion at any time, but.
you go ahead, you go ahead.
Okay. Mr. Hoagland, can you pull the map back up when you
Yes,
get
sir.
around?
Still on this. Sorry, it always takes me a while to navigate these screens that I'm supposed to be sharing.
That's okay. Thank you.
Yeah, but Chairman, as he's pulling that up, I know, it's quite a task to inventory all the existing businesses that are, in this area. So, if we find properties that should be considered and we can do it today, it's much better to do it than try to come back and do it at a later point.
Yeah, I agree, Mr. Oakley, and we're probably not going to find everything, but at least we can just do the best we can with the time, we've been allotted. Mr. Hoagland, could you just overview what the properties that have been added since our last meeting?
Yes, sir. I'll be happy to do that. In the Anderson community, you've got 11033 North Carolina Highway 62 South. That is a Family Dollar retail store. 55 Roscoe Dameron Road, that's another Dollar General. Retail store 64 Roscoe Dameron Road, which is the Piedmont Electric facility. 10325/10331 NC Highway 119 South, which is an auto repair garage. 11201 NC Highway 119 South, which is Maverick Gunworks. 672 Union Ridge Road in Burlington, which is Boswell Trucking. 63 Baines Road in Burlington, which is an AT&T telephone, quite small utility building. 5659 Highway 62 South Yanceyville, which is the Oakview store. 10331 and 10325 NC Highway 119 South, which is Rudd and Sons Garage. In the Prospect Hill community, you've got 15862 North Carolina Highway 86 South, which is a Dollar General retail store. 15645 and 47 North Carolina Highway 86 South, which is a service station and restaurant. 14426 86 South. Yes, sir.
I'm sorry to interrupt you. Is that the gas station at the Triangle?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
That's correct. Scott, that's the gas station at the Triangle?
Which one?
15645 and 15647 Highway 86 South.
So
It's listed as service station / restaurant, yeah. 15052 Highway 86 South, Eurofins Agri-Science Services.
Okay, good. Scott, that's one that I had, but Scott must have picked up on that one. Yeah, go ahead, Mr. Hoagland.
Yes, sir. 15080 Highway 86 South Hillside Sales. 14139 86 South Prospect Hill E Plus Thrift. 322 Main Street, which is the Prospect Hill Community Health Center. 17 Main Street, the Prospect Hill US Post Office Building. 4887 Corbett Ridge Road in Mebane, which is Corbett Ridge Grocery and Garage. 9849 Highway 86, which is Utley Investments LLC. In the High Towers community, 8925 Highway 86 South, South Elementary School Institutional Facility. 24 Old Highway 86 South, Walker Grocery and Service Station. That's listed twice, so I'm not exactly sure. 446 Highway 119 North in Mebane for Lynch Trucking. And in Leesburg.
Question about
Yes, sir.
both, I guess, Lynch Trucking and up in Anderson and Roswell. But I think both of those, with the new definitions, are going to fall into, they just stay residential agricultural because they have primary residence on that property.
That's a good question. I can look, if I recall correctly, that's really just kind of through the woods, a couple parcels away from South Elementary, correct? I think it's actually on its own parcel. And then they own another parcel next to it.
I'm pretty positive that Boswell Trucking is the primary residence on the same property of the business. So I don't think that, I think that would just stay residential agriculture.
Okay, so we should remove that from the list? Okay. And then in Leesburg, 2 properties. The first is 7374 US Highway 158. That's Leesburg Grocery and US Postal Service. And then 7634 Highway 158 is the Dollar General retail store.
Okay, and Mr. Hoagland, how would we deal with the Leesburg Post Office? Is that just going to stay residential agricultural, or would that qualify for light industrial as well?
Based on the map that you have before you right now, it would be zoned as light industrial.
Okay.
But let me take a look. I'm trying to recall, I don't believe post offices are listed on the table of uses. I think the closest thing is our institutional facilities.
Okay.
And the Leesburg Grocery and the post office are on the same tax parcel.
Okay, great. Okay, I just want to make sure that got included.
So interestingly enough, that is all one property.
Okay.
That's 2 separate structures.
And I'm looking at the map, Mr. Hoagland, southeast of South Elementary School. Looks like it's one light industrial area right on Highway 86 South.
Yeah.
Is that the property that has the fuel tanks?
That is the property with Walker Store between 86 and Old 86 and Mize Road.
It looks like it's further south though on Highway 86 south of that.
Oh, yeah. That was one, Mr. Oakley recommended that one. And that was. It's a small little triangle right here. So that's South Elementary School where the mouse is. He's talking about this piece of property here.
It's south of South Elementary, but it's on the northeast side of Highway 86.
Yeah, I believe that is that the Utley Investments fuel storage property?
So yeah, that's what that was.
9849, UNC Highway 86.
Yep, that's it.
Because that made me think there's also storage tanks at the intersection of Ridgeville and 86. I'm not sure if that needs to be qualified as well, but that just came to my mind.
Yeah, it's a good point, and You certainly can add that to the list of recommendations today, or if the zoning were to go into effect, it can be changed after the fact.
What was the last one?
The fuel tanks that are on, at the intersection of Ridgeville Road and Highway 86, basically kind of across the street from Royal Park.
Is that only propane?
I'm not 100% sure.
I think it's only propane. I mean, that's not fuel.
And there's a house back off the road on that property that's on the same parcel, isn't it? No, not the same parcel.
My recollection is the one that is on the corner of Ridgeville Road and 86 was that Utley Investment LLC fuel storage.
If you're going back toward Hillsborough, below South Elementary, before you get to the school, is there another LP gas tank storage there also?
Just after you pass the school.
Or get to the creek. Yeah, but that's the one we're talking about before you, when you get down to the bottom of the hill, there's something on the left right there. That's what that is.
Yeah, this is what you're talking about.
Ridgeville and 86.
Ridgeville.
Yep.
All right, let's see. How about the racetrack in Leesburg?
You know,
So that is actually currently in the Hyco Lake zoning area. And it's kind of just, since it's abandoned and the use of that property hasn't really come into question, at least since I've been county planner.
I know it's been come back to life, 2 or 3 times.
well, you know,
Phoenix race.
yeah, I mean, the Idaho covers racetracks now, so there's setbacks associated with those. I think that would be the situation. If they are.
So, Mr. Chairman, if you can see the screen, I think this is the property that you're referring to, where the address point for 10 Ridgeville Road is right where the storage tanks are.
Yes, sir, right at the corner. Yes, sir.
And then the house further back has an address of 228 Ridgeville Road. So if this were, well, let's see here. All right, so the table of uses has a category for gasoline or fuel oil storage. It's permitted in light industrial. So if this were to stay as residential agricultural, it would technically be non-conforming, and they would need to address that if they ever expanded their gas storage operations. They could petition for rezoning. They could petition for a portion of that property to be rezoned. There's several ways that I could see something like that being addressed. But certainly if the board wanted to recommend adding this to light industrial, if you were to add it to light industrial, then you make the house non-conforming, which could be tricky.
If there's a residence on it.
It's a fun little puzzle piece.
Is the house
Occupied?
and the owner of the tanks facility?
That's a great question. I really have no idea.
Could that
10 yard with them own that land.
Okay.
I don't know about the house. But I think they sold them the land to put the tank on. Lost
So the tank area storage may be a separate parcel of land at this point.
I would think so.
I would think so too.
I don't know that, but.
I haven't,
It's like
Somebody
on
agrees,
there,
but
I don't recall authorizing a subdivision, and if it's happened in the last, Sylvia usually gets new subdivisions in the GIS pretty quickly. within a
Well,
month.
that's been there for over a year.
Yes, it's been there 2 or 3 years. He could have just leased it to him, I don't know.
Yeah,
He must be leasing.
was permitted on one property, that's the thing. I don't think there's been a subdivision. I don't think there's been a.
That's propane storage, light industrial.
Well, we have, like I said, we have gasoline or fuel oil storage, which is kind of the closest category. And it's zoned light industrial.
If there's a primary residence on it, I think I would just recommend leaving it as is, being non-conforming, and then if they want to expand it, then.
Right. I think that's probably the wisest thing to do.
Okay, it would be able to expand under the home-based business designation, Matt?
Yeah, he may. It's a little bit unorthodox because they've got storage tanks as opposed to like a garage or an accessory building. But like I said, I think it could be handled in a number of different ways. You always have the opportunity to split a parcel into two zoning categories. So you could go back and just zone the area for the storage tanks as light industrial. The property owner could divide the property and zone the smaller portion as light industrial. I don't know if the home is occupied, they could basically abandon the house and then the entire property could basically be used as light industrial. So even if it were to stay as residential agricultural today, they would still have options and some flexibility moving forward through the zoning plan.
Is that the old Royal Park building to the north of there?
Yes, sir, that is.
Is that zone light industrial?
Yes.
Would it be possible just to
Why it's doing that.
propose just zoning the corner there and not the entire farm? Matt, is that a possibility?
Yeah, we could certainly do that.
Could you pause for a minute and just like cut him off and then cut him back on?
Yeah, we could try that.
I might want to tell him why.
Well, I'm still very careful about it. Mr. Chairman, can you hear us okay? Because your voice is coming through a little bit staticky on your end.
No, I didn't hear that last part, sorry.
Can you hear us okay? Because your voice is coming through with a little bit of static.
Yes, I can hear you now.
Okay.
Can he turn down his microphone volume?
Would it help to turn down your microphone a little bit?
Yeah, certainly.
Do you have a microphone?
It was better when you talked last.
All right.
Yeah, it's just got a weird digital static sound to it.
It's almost like it's a reverb.
Yeah.
Okay, guys, go ahead.
Okay. So yeah, if you wanted to just zone the portion around the tanks there at 10 Ridgeville Road, then you certainly may add that to the list and make that recommendation.
Well, and you know, we may be going down the wrong road because whoever owns the property, you know, they may have a different, you know, philosophy. So, you know, I think we're just in uncharted territories and we're just gonna have to do the best we can and then, and I guess, you know, see what happens in the future and continue to adapt. But I'm up for doing it either way. It's, you know, it's the pleasure of the board, so I'm fine either way with it.
I think I would be in favor of leaving it as is, as non-conforming.
Well, its current use is grandfathered in.
Right.
So I mean, there's no downside to its current use.
Yeah, if they continue operating exactly how they are, then they're not going to run into any zoning trouble.
It's only if you get into an expansion.
Correct. And even then, it's a degree of expansion. So I think you're allowed a certain percentage before you would even have to comply with new zoning code. So if they want to add a tank or expand their footage or whatever, then they would be allowed to do that up to a certain percentage before they breach the non-conforming status.
But if they did away with the tanks and he wanted to put a Dollar General there.
Yeah, in that scenario, they'd have to do a rezone. Yeah, and the Dollar Generals too, you know, we thought about this a lot as we were kind of crafting some of the language. The Dollar Generals have always subdivided their own lot. You know, it exists by itself on its own lot. So most likely, if a Dollar General approached a property owner about developing on their land, they would take it upon themselves to subdivide, create their little 1 or 2 acres that they would be on. That would be zoned into the light industrial category, and then they would build the Dollar General.
Or any other type of business would be the same.
Right, exactly.
And Mr. Hoagland, the other property I wanted to add is the Wilson's Auto Body Shop.
Okay.
That would be just to the north of North Elementary School, maybe 1/2 mile on the left.
Okay.
Or the west side of 86, I should say.
Is that auto body shop on its own piece of land, or is it on the same property as the residence?
I'm not sure. I know that's a business. I'm not sure, who owns it or who lives next door. I just knew that was a commercial enterprise.
They live in the house beside it. To the right of it.
Do you have an address or an approximate address? He said it's near South Elementary, right?
It's very close to.
It's just south of Mary Jane Bigelow Road, and on the west side of Highway 86.
Wilson.
Is that the one that we looked at right on?
I think it did, yeah, because we looked at square footage of it, yeah. It was like right across the road from Reese
I
College.
thought that was on the map. It may be on the map, it's just very, very small. You said south of Mary Jane Bigelow Road? 7834. Wilson Brothers Body and Frame Shop, 7834 NC Highway 86 South, Yanceyville. All right.
No residents on that property.
Yeah.
Yeah, what, the residents?
That's correct. Yes. No residents. Sorry. I was writing and thinking at the same time. All right, Mr. Chairman, I've added that to my list.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Hoagland.
Yes, sir. All right.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
can I make another comment? I hope positive one here.
Yes, sir.
This board, our board, envision a way. What concerns me is a shotgun approach to multiple light industry or general business, whatever we're going to call it, areas. And what happens if we miss one? What we're trying to resolve here, I believe, is if these businesses wish to expand or they wish to sell their business to someone else that, to avoid having to have that person have it rezoned. Is that accurate? Is there a way that we can, within the context of the comprehensive land use plan, redefine or modify the grandfathering aspect of these existing businesses to allow that to occur without rezoning or allow that grandfathering to go on at that point? Is there a way within statutes and everything else so that we don't need to come up with these highly detailed lists? The reason to have the light industrial zone, as you may recall from last month's presentation, was as a template for new businesses that want to come. I mean, that's specifically why we created it, to make it easier for new businesses to come and fit in that definition of light industry or general business. And this concerns me for the two reasons I mentioned, that what if we miss somebody? And isn't there an easier way to accomplish this rather than having this shotgun approach? And would you all, I mean, is that something that this board would want to consider?
Well, first off, may I make a comment? First off, if we miss somebody, Matt's gonna find them in his circulation, or they gonna come to Matt wanting to be zoned. At which time they come before this board and we zone them whatever they need to be. No,
That's not the way the ordinance works.
we can't do that, Matt?
Yeah, I mean, that's certainly an option.
Well, they can't show proof of that they've been in business X amount of years or was in business before the zoning went into effect. They should automatically be grandfathered.
Yeah.
Okay, well, I mean,
No, what I'm trying to deal with is the expansion. What I'm talking about is if that business wants to expand, or they want to sell to someone else that wants to continue the business, right now, they would have to get zoned for that.
No, they just exist as a non-conforming use. It's only if they wanted to expand in a certain way that was beyond the limitations of the non-conforming use that they would have to rezone. Or if the zoning goes through and then after the fact, it comes to the attention of either the planning board or the county commissioners that Bob's repair shop was missed, and you just go through the process and say, okay, Bob, we're gonna go ahead and just zone your parcel as light industrial. He doesn't have to go through the conditional rezoning process. You just switch it from residential agricultural to light industrial to accommodate his use.
Do you have to go through any public notification about that?
Yeah, you do have to go through a public hearing. I mean, anytime you're amending the ordinance or amending the map, whatever, you have to go through a public hearing.
so say that again now, your example.
Yeah, so let's say we missed Bob's repair shop.
Right.
He's got an auto body garage, on 1 or 2 acres, not a big operation, but technically it should be light industrial. If the zoning goes into place, and then after the fact, it comes to the attention of either the planning board or the commissioners or whoever the powers that be, there's a process where you just rezone that light industrial.
Who rezones?
The planning board first considers the revision, and then ultimately the commissioners ratify the map amendment.
Okay, that's what I'm talking about.
Right.
Yes. So that goes through this process.
Yes.
To establish where the commissioners have to approve. I don't know what I'm doing.
Well, let me read.
I'd like to figure out a way around that.
This may be beneficial as well. So the non-conforming clauses that are already in the UDO for reestablishment or expansion of a non-conforming situation. Any non-conforming building or structure, or any building or structure containing a non-conforming use for which a major repair or construction is proposed in any amount equal to 60% or more of the taxed value of the building or structure or which has been damaged by a cause to an extent equal to 60% or more of the tax value shall only be repaired and or constructed as a non-conforming structure and a non-conforming use. So let's say you have a property that's valued at $100,000 and they want to do $60,000 in alterations and expansions. If they're technically non-conforming, they can do that. When they do $61,000 in expansions, that's when they would need to do a rezoning.
Read that, because I thought it said it had to be more than 60%.
Right, once it gets above 60%, then they do the rezoning, yeah,
So they could expand it by 60%
of the tax value.
the tax.
Yeah.
Without any issues.
Correct.
Okay, that deals with that
Yeah.
expansion. What about sale?
Sale, so the use always runs with the land regardless of owner. So you can sell somebody a non-conforming business and they don't have to bring it into conformity at that time.
Because I thought that that's what the driving force for all these parcels was, is if somebody wanted to sell it.
My driving force for trying to inventory and get it right is so we don't have a flood of all of these individual cases coming in that we're gonna have to deal with for the next year or two or three, right? So this cleans up as much of it as we can right now. And there's probably gonna be some exceptions out there that we do miss, but we can deal with those.
Why would people have to come?
For the protections.
Well, only in the situation there where, you know, you're non-conforming and you're gonna do something that expands or whatever, right? Let's just if you go ahead and put the business as zoning, and we can get as many of them there as need be, then they don't have to worry about it in the future. They can expand however they want to, right? And that's a good thing. And then the other piece of this is, as long as home businesses fall within this, they don't have to worry about it either, right? Their home business, they can continue to work that and expand that, and you know, they're not gonna have to come to the county for any type of additional approvals or anything, right?
But let's say John Doe's grocery, it was grandfathered in. All right, make sure I understand this. John Doe's grocery was grandfathered in. 5 years from now, John Doe was to sell his grocery store. All right. It's not gonna be anything like, let's say that they want to add on 5,000 more square foot to the thing. So they got to go back in front of the zoning board before they can purchase land and, the planning board and all that, the planning department, before they can add on to the existing structure that was grandfathered in.
They would not have to go before any board to sell. You can sell it as it is, even if it's non-conforming. If the expansion of 5,000 square feet under what we currently have is greater than 60% of the existing tax value, then they would need a petition for rezoning.
Okay.
Only if it's more than 60% of the total value.
Yes, sir.
Total value of the structure, was that structure, property, everything.
It just says any amount equal to 60% or more of the tax value of the building or structure.
So that does not include the property itself is sitting.
Correct. Just the building or structure.
Wouldn't it include the property, everything that you said includes everything?
I would,
That's saying right there, structure.
yeah, I mean, in a situation like that, we probably get in touch with the tax department for clarification.
You get your land value, and then you get your dwelling, what's the value of the dwelling amount,
The land and the structure go hand in hand. If you sell it,
Mr. Bernard don't see it that way. They're at their tax office. Mr. Bernard don't see it that way. Your structure is valued at one price, your property is valued at another price. And you pay
That's
taxes
right.
on the combined figure.
Right, that's correct. So you can, 60% is a big expansion.
Yeah, and the non-conforming uses too in the UDO were unchanged from 160D because the county, if I understand it correctly, the county has pretty wide latitude on what it classifies as a non-conforming use.
So once again, I just don't see the flood that you're talking about. I mean, I don't.
I just like to get things done correctly the first time.
I know,
Doing that this way doesn't hurt it though. Is there anything?
Well-
I don't see any harm in going ahead and listing things.
I'm sure it looks messed up.
It seems to me too, I mean, you need to have community meetings to let these business owners and everybody else be aware so they can make sure that their property or business is owned, is zoned or not, zoned as residential or commercial. They need to voluntarily come up and make sure, say, hey, I mean,
They need to understand what's going on.
yes. I mean, it needs to be community, I mean, fire departments, stuff such as that.
Well, that almost speaks to not zoning anything other than what they are right now. Residential agriculture.
I'm talking about like for a business owner.
They're right now, they're grandfathered in as they are. They're not being rezoned.
Well,
Again,
this is out of the district, but, if any of y'all know where Pleasant Store is at in Pearlie, that is considered, commercial property. And they're taxed, but the building's dilapidated, but they can't get out of commercial property. And, some people may not want their business, is zoned as industrial or whatever. They may just want it as residential, we're gonna do away with this. I mean, they need to have that option.
So I guess that's why he was talking about this list is for those individuals to get them together and let them know, so they would have an option, correct?
Well, the list is, for general information purposes. So you guys have a coherent list of exactly all the properties that are there. And certainly, this is a public document. So the property owners who own these parcels will be able to view it as well. I will say too, part of the requirement the state requires is at least one public hearing before the commissioners take action on this. So that's definitely part of the process.
And I think to our earlier discussion, if the commissioners want to not accept the recommendation, they have the option to do that as well, right?
Correct.
I'd say what we're doing is just creating a list of recommendations, and it's up to the commissioners if they want to accept it or not.
Again, I guess this is a way to let these individuals know that they're on the radar. And they can come forward and say.
Well, just generally speaking, what I recall from the required public hearing notifications is there have to be circulars in the newspaper, there have to be signs posted in prominent high traffic areas, and there has to be mailings, direct mailings to all property owners who own property in the proposed zoned area but live outside of the proposed zoned area. And we have to send mail notification to all adjacent property owners. So even if you own property in Person County and it's right on the line, you're going to get a piece of mail too. So there's a pretty extensive public notification process that goes along with public hearing. So if you're wondering what I'm doing,
You're gonna make very busy. You're gonna make very busy if that's the case.
I'm still struggling with the need for it. I don't see what the advantage for the landowner is. They're not really changing anything they're doing.
Just letting them know.
Let them know what.
They're gonna lose the power and control what goes on with their land.
No, not at all. Not at all. Quite the opposite.
Their neighbors will tell them what they can do and can't do with their land.
No. Only if they want to go beyond 60%.
I'm talking about zoning in general.
Well, we're not talking about that. That's a whole different philosophy, and what we're trying to do by working the grandfathering like a rented mule is to avoid telling people what they can do with their land.
I have to disagree.
Well, I mean, that's the way it works. By having it grandfathered and not rezoning them, if you rezone them to light and industry, that limits what they can do there. If you don't do anything with it and let grandfathering govern,
I mean, I
the
understand.
limitations are much smaller, much less stringent.
Yeah, I understand what you're saying as well. I think the original concern that I had when I saw the map was it was inconsistent, meaning some Dollar Generals were zoned, some were not, some equivalent businesses were, some were not. And to me, that made no sense. And so then the next step is, okay, we'll inventory what you have so that we can see what we're dealing with, which then led to the home business scenario and trying not to affect those guys. So anyway, as long as there's consistency here, my opinion is that's fine, but I just don't want the map to be inconsistent.
Well, the zoned areas are the new Dollar Generals, if you will. And that was done, in my opinion, just to establish this light industry area template. It wasn't really to pinpoint those areas per se. So those are new buildings, new things. They haven't been there for years and years and years. And here's an example. Basically, it says, here's an example of light industry. General business. That's all it's there. Is to allow a new business that wants to come in, someone who wants to sell their land to a new business, to have that new business owner be able to conform to demonstrate that they're a non-polluting industry when you get right down to it. It's a whole driving force behind this whole.
So what if the zoning goes forward, and your area is zoned, and somebody wants to put up a cell phone tower, what are they gonna do then?
It's perfectly allowed, just like we're doing it now.
Okay, but their neighbors will have to say so if they want it or not, correct?
I don't believe so.
No, cell towers are permitted in both the residential, agricultural, and light industrial.
So that will fall in that.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
They still have to abide by the Article 9 process, and they still have a public hearing before the planning board, but it's allowed in both zones.
Do it just like it's done now.
The other extreme example would be, let's say, I think you had businesses that were of, what did you call it? Sexual.
The sexually oriented
The
businesses.
sexually oriented businesses, and those are only light industrial, so someone would have to come in and get approval and go through the public hearing process before they could do that next week. That's one of the few examples of where you get forced into this.
And Mr. Hoagland, can you hear me okay?
Yeah, we can hear you. It's still kind of staticky and the volume is a little low.
Okay. And just to clarify, so if you have a vacant farm or a vacant lot that does not have a residence, they would not be allowed the advantages of the home-based business clause, correct?
Correct, yeah, as the definition is right now, as it was drafted for today, the home-based business would be in an accessory structure on the same lot as a residence or inside the residence itself.
Okay, all right. Thanks for the clarification.
Yes, sir.
Okay, I got a question now. On the piece of property, guy wants to buy my property. He wants to, build a distribution warehouse. What's he gonna have to do to build a distribution warehouse? 5,000 foot,
5,000 square feet.
no, 10,000 square feet, 10,000.
So assuming your existing property is zoned residential agriculture, right?
Right?
You could either go through the rezoning process first and then sell it to him, or you could sell it to him and then he goes through the rezoning process to change it to light industrial with conditions to accommodate the distribution center.
Okay, he builds his 10,000 foot distribution zone. At what point can he build 60% more?
If he's zoned light industrial, he can expand with no limitations because he's not non-conforming. If you had a distribution center on a residential lot, then you try to expand your non-conforming.
That's
But
what
if
he
you've got
said.
a distribution center on an industrial lot, you can double, you can expand, you can grab the parcel next to you and change that zoning and keep building and building and hopefully create a ton of jobs in the process. So the zoning would definitely be accommodating in that type of situation.
In that situation, where if it was residential, he could not come and put up a 20,000 square foot lot.
Correct.
7,500.
And that's exactly what you want. You don't want some big corporation, if you got a residential home, coming building close to you.
Correct.
That's what the zoning helps out.
Good question. Mr. Chairman, are you there?
Yes, sir. Is getting over an ear infection, so I was assisting her. I apologize.
Not a problem.
All right, so what, we've had a lot of discussion, folks. What's the pleasure of the board?
I would like to make a motion that we change light industrial to general business.
All right, that's a motion by Mr. Oakley, and I apologize. Who was the second?
Antonio Foster.
Mr. Foster. From light industrial to business, general business?
Yeah.
Okay. We have a motion by Mr. Oakley and seconded by Mr. Foster to change the zoning designation from light industrial to business. Is there any discussion?
Is there any impact on the table of uses when it uses the phrase light industrial? You do that, that's the only.
That is a good question.
Maybe we have to change the heading of it for sure.
Correct, yeah.
Well, I meant-
What's the benefit?
On
I think
page,
it's less confusing, but it's just. Hard It's to get the discussion. If you guys want to disagree, you're not gonna offend me, right?
I just got light industrial figured out.
But to me, like general business to me is a lot more clear than light industrial. General business to me makes more sense.
Yeah, but you got a heavy industrial, you got light industrial. So what do you go?
General business, that's everything.
It is.
That's what we're putting, light commercial.
That would be fun.
It's definitely a broad, general business is definitely a broad category, but you still have the table of uses, which kind of narrows the specific use on the specific parcel. So Commissioner Ostraker, to your question, you could possibly have some confusion with the line item that says light industrial uses not otherwise listed.
yeah, that's
But
what.
But if it's not otherwise listed, it's still pushed into the light industrial or what would be the general business category. And it's kind of taken care of. So I think it's broad enough that it would still be applicable and the definition wouldn't change. just the
Right.
term.
No definition.
So the definition, again, currently the definition for light industrial refers generally to the zoned area which excludes residential and it includes commercial, institutional, general business operations and similar uses. So it's already quite broad.
The thing I like about general business is it does describe a Dollar General a little bit better than light industrial. I like business.
That's geographic.
Business like, business like.
Okay, any further discussion? Hearing none, we'll take a vote. All those in favor of changing the designation from light industrial to general business, please let me know by saying aye. All those opposed, like sign. The motion carries. Okay. Any further discussion on the southeast zoning proposal? So, Mr. Hoagland, I guess if you could just outline our options again, as far as statutorily and the request from the Board of Commissioners.
Yes, sir. So again, the UDO gives the planning board, what you're doing in reviewing this application is you're technically reviewing a text amendment to the UDO because you're adding provisions to Article 5, you're adding to the zoning table and so forth. So what the UDO says is the planning board shall have a maximum of 45 days from the date of the planning board meeting to make a recommendation on the application. If a recommendation is made to the Board of Commissioners by the planning board concerning an amendment to the ordinance, the recommendation shall be as follows. A, the adoption of the amendment as written. B, the adoption of the amendment as revised by the planning board, which is more or less what we've been doing today. Or C, denial of the amendment.
And Mr. Hoagland, if we go beyond the 45-day period, is it possible for the planning board to continue to work at this if we wanted to, or continue to review the proposal and the comprehensive plan?
I'm not entirely certain if that would be, if that would really jive with the ordinance. So right after it talks about the 45-day maximum, it says, if a recommendation is not made during the time period, the application shall be forwarded to the Board of Commissioners without a recommendation from the planning board. So I think it just automatically goes back to the commissioners if no action is taken within that 45 days.
Okay, and you mentioned the date of September 10th. So basically, if no recommendation is made by then it goes directly to the Board of Commissioners as no recommendation whatsoever.
Yeah, correct. And so everything that we've done from the July meeting to now would be wiped away because the original draft, which you received from the commissioners, would be the one that goes back to them. So everything we've done since then would be effectively undone.
Okay. All right. I'm just thinking we've had a fruitful discussion today and a lengthy discussion. I think it's been productive. It'd be nice to have more time, but I understand that we're bound by the statutes and the designation as well. So in any event, it's the pleasure of the board. So how do we want to proceed? Any input from the board members is how we would like to proceed?
If it's appropriate, at this time, I'd make a motion that we adopt the changes as we have revised them and forward these recommendations to the Board of Commissioners. I think the changes improve the proposal as it was submitted to us. They certainly can pick and choose anything, I guess, that they want to accept or reject at that point, right?
Correct. Yeah, they don't have to take the recommendations exactly, but you're certainly free to make those recommendations to them.
So I would make the motion that we approve as amended as we reviewed today.
And Mr. Oakley, would that include the proposals today, today as well?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, so
Clarification, are you talking about the businesses listed? Because I haven't heard you vote on that.
Well, let's make sure we got that squared away.
Yeah, I mean, you can go through one by one and make a motion to approve specific aspects of the plan, or you could just say,
You need to define the plan.
I feel that the plan as presented and amended, as presented today is what you want to make a motion on.
And would that include the businesses that we discussed and added to your list, right?
Yeah, so what I would say is probably the best thing to do is incorporate into your motion those specific changes. So your motion would include the addition of Wilson's Body and Frame Shop. It might include the definition for home-based businesses, those specific items that are not part of your agenda packet.
I'll give it a try. So the new motion would be to adopt the changes that we've incorporated today, which would include the addition of, I think Wilson's Garage was one of the businesses, and also the definition of home-based business and the incorporation of that into the definition of agricultural residential zone.
does the board want to include the American Legion building as well as the commercial facility next to it as well, Scott?
I would be fine with including those two as well, yes.
Those are on the list.
I don't think American Legion was on the list.
And the storage facility, storage building.
Yeah, the one storage facility we already had on the list, the one down on Original and 86, we had that one. And I think we decided not to add the other one that was on the corner of 86, it's right there on Royal Park. We didn't want to add that.
You're talking about the one next to the American Legion.
I'm not even familiar with one besides American Legion. Is there another storage facility there?
Well, storage building, sales yard.
It's a sales
Like a little
operation for,
Something like that.
yeah. It's a sales business of small
Seems that
businesses.
lots of roads are going down the highway. They're pulling behind these straight roads, scaring to death.
I don't know if you can see, it would be, it says I moved the mouse.
If it's a standalone business,
Yes.
as we have
It's way down here.
documented, I would
It's way down there where the mouse is.
Yeah.
It's a pretty large piece of property. The front of it is used as the storage building, sales operation, and that parcel was actually approved for a cell tower a number of years ago, and Verizon Wireless never built it. Anyway, sorry, that's beside the point.
But yes, I would add those properties to the list as well.
And just a point of information too, there needs to be some sort of statement regarding consistency with the comprehensive plan.
And I would, I guess, include in that statement that we would see this as consistent with, and these changes would be consistent with the comprehensive plan.
Not to accept your premise. High towers. South Elementary School is listed. It's already defined in the permitted table of uses for public schools. I don't think that needs to be
list there, so yeah, I think the final dot needs to be.
That public and private schools are listed as permitted under both agricultural and now, or potentially general business. I agree. So that needs to be strict. Right.
Yeah, so I think the point, Matthew, is that list that we had originally, right? It was just an inventory. There's definitely some things that we, like Boswell trucking shouldn't be on that list because of the resident, that's our property with the residents.
Okay.
So that one was one item that should be removed. Commissioner Oestreicher was just mentioning schools don't need to be listed on there because they're covered by both categories, right?
I can't believe the post office needs to be listed.
We're not federally owned.
Right.
Unless you're in California, they're owned by the police.
You're right.
The thing that makes the lease
The ones
for,
I know, and I don't know about the one in Yansway, but I know the one in Milton was leased. Possibly a little bit on it.
Small at least.
Prospect Hill one is, I don't know if it's leased or not. I think
it's on Pat Warren's property.
I know where, I mean, who owns it?
I know they are.
Yeah, they lease
Oh,
all of them.
I think you're right, because US Post Office is not a federal government business. It's a standalone business.
So I just want to clarify, so the alterations to the list as it was presented is to remove Boswell Trucking at 672 Union Ridge Road, to remove South Elementary School, and to add Wilson's Body and Frame Shop at 7834 Highway 86, to add the American Legion building, and to add the storage building sales property next door to the American Legion building as general business.
I think that is everything that I was calling this.
Okay.
All right, Chairman Johnson, is that good enough? I know that's been a long motion with some modifications there.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. I think we all get the the intent, and I think we've had some good discussions today, and that was a good motion to summarize it, Mr. Oakley. Okay, so we have a motion on the floor. Do we have a second?
Second.
All right. Was that Mr. Foster?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, yes.
All right. So we have a motion by Mr. Oakley, seconded by Mr. Foster, to recommend make the recommendation to the Board of Commissioners based upon the proposals and inventory list from today, and then the additional proposals mentioned in Mr. Oakley's motion. Is there any discussion? Okay, hearing no discussion, all those in favor, please let me know by saying aye. Okay, all those opposed, like sign. All right, I apologize. I guess we need to get everyone to raise your hand. Can you hear me okay, Mr. Hoagland?
Yeah, we can hear you. It's still a little bit staticky, but I think we can hear you.
All right, I apologize. Okay, so everybody in the favor of the motion, please raise your hand. Okay, all those opposed, raise your hand. Okay, motion carries. Okay. Next on the list, Planning Department updates, Mr. Matthew Hoagland.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I do not have any updates.
Well.
I had an update for the last meeting, but it went so long, we just skipped that part. So
Okay,
this time I'm not giving you nothing.
all right, perfect. Well, we had a long meeting, a lot of good discussion. Glad everyone could be here today. And if there's no other business, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
All right, motion to adjourn. All those in favor, let me know by saying aye. All right, meeting adjourned. Everybody have a good day. Thank you.
Thank you. Take care.
Okay.